At political management more generally now, and I want to look backwards and then we can look forwards. Your Prime Ministership has so far been defined by your burning of policy. You've come up with $1.7 billion that you can put towards the cost of living crisis. What I'd like to ask is, why was this work not done by your government last year?
The previous Prime Minister indicated before Christmas that we were going to need to go through a reprioritisation process at the beginning of this year. I think our government has demonstrated over the last 5.5 years that as circumstances change, we need to change and we need to be able to adapt to them. So our priorities in 2020 were actually quite different to what they were when we became government in 2017, because the situation had changed. We were dealing with a global pandemic. We had to recut our cloth accordingly. Now we're out the other side of much of that pandemic response, and we're facing a new set of challenges around the economy and around recovering from two recent natural disasters that have had a significant impact. So we need to go through again and we need to recut our cloth to meet the circumstances.
Absolutely, but what I'm asking is, inflation began spiking in June of 2021. This crisis that we are now in, this cost of living crisis, has been in the post for around 18 months. So many Kiwis will be looking at the policies that you've burned just this year and thinking, the government was running in the wrong direction, chasing unpopular policies that were ideologically driven, while they've been struggling to make ends meet in a cost of living crisis, Prime Minister. Well,
I don't think it's fair to say that we haven't been looking at the cost of living, challenges over that period of time.
But it hasn't been your single focus, which it is now, and what I'm asking is whether that should have been the case 12 months ago.
Well, it's certainly been a focus of the government. So if you look at the fuel tax reductions, the half-price public transport, the cost of living payment, the winter energy payment, increases to the minimum wage, these are all things that the government has been doing to support New Zealanders through what is a really challenging set of economic circumstances.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't think anybody's saying that you haven't done anything at all. But why was this not your focus last year, as you have made it at the start of your Prime Ministership? Why was the government pursuing unpopular policies that were irrelevant to New Zealanders at a time when they were struggling with a cost of living crisis?
Well, look, I don't want to spend my whole time looking backwards, but what I would say is that we have needed at the start of this year to say, look, there are things that we would like to do, but now's not the right time to do them. I think what I also said, and I've been quite open about this, is I think to some extent our government was trying to do too many things all at the same time.
Well, was it doing the wrong things, Prime Minister? Running in the wrong direction? That is a lot of bandwidth.
And I think, if anything, we were stretching the bandwidth a bit much, with too many things on the go at the same time. And I think we have needed to reprioritise and refocus. That's what I've been focused on, leading the government through.
Yeah, so you do acknowledge that actually those policies that you have put on the bonfire and burned, essentially, they were policies that were not reflective of the priorities of New Zealand.
Well, New Zealanders' priorities have changed in the last few years. Again, let's go back to 2017, different circumstance. 2 years ago, New Zealanders'
I'm talking about last year and the things that you've just burned.
At the beginning of last year, New Zealanders' #1 priority, according to all the polls and all the research, was COVID-19, and now it barely features in terms of the issues that New Zealanders are anxious and concerned about. New Zealanders' priorities have changed during that time. Government needs to make sure that we are reflecting New Zealanders' expectation of us.
Do you acknowledge that those policies were not in line with the priorities of New Zealanders?
I'd acknowledge that some of those things were things that would be nice to do. There was merit in them, but not right now. They're not the #1 priority at the moment.
So you've made your ability to own mistakes a central plank of who you are as Prime Minister. So why can't you just acknowledge to voters, yeah, we got it wrong, and the time and energy that went into those could have been better spent?
Oh, look, I'll own my mistakes. Where I make a mistake, I've been really upfront with Kiwis. I'm a human being and I will make mistakes. I'm bound to make some in the future, and I'll endeavour to own those when I do. And I don't think I make more mistakes than other politicians. I think I do own them a bit more, and I'm a bit more candid and a bit more honest about them than perhaps some other people are. In terms of the government's overall approach, though, I'm not going to provide a commentary on my predecessor, or we're different people. We've got different priorities, and I don't think that would be fair.
No, but if she was sitting here, Prime Minister, I would be asking her the same questions, and you are now the Prime Minister. You were around that cabinet table, you were taking those decisions, and so you're accountable now.
Absolutely, and I'll totally be accountable for the decisions that I make as Prime Minister and that the Cabinet makes. And I've set out really clearly what I want us to be focused on.
And so will you acknowledge that actually the policies that you were pursuing last year, the government was out of touch?
I don't think necessarily out of touch. I think we needed to refocus and reprioritise, and that's what we've done.
Why do you think the government was losing support last year in the polls? You're a political animal, you will have looked at this.
Yeah, look, I think sort of the second half of 2021 and then through 2022 was really challenging for New Zealand and for New Zealanders. I know people don't like to talk about the global pandemic anymore, but clearly our exit from our elimination strategy was a bumpy road, and that created some really big challenges for Kiwis. You know, up in Auckland, I know that they're still feeling the after effects of the lockdown and everything that went with that, and clearly that affected their support for the government. Let's be upfront and acknowledge that. And there's still a legacy there. There's still the tail end of that's out there. I think through 2022 we saw a different set of challenges emerge. The cost of living clearly became one of the